Hello, I'm Father Andrew O'Connor. I'm the Executive Officer for Mission and Ministry here at Saint Francis Ministries, and it's my pleasure today to have a conversation with our CEO, Bill Clark. Bill, how you doing?
Terrific. It's great to be with you, Andrew, as always.
It is great to be with you as well. So the first question I want to ask you about is, tell me a little bit about Saint Francis Ministries, our mission, our vision, our values, programs. What would you say about Saint Francis Ministries?
I would say St. Francis is a very special place. We're in the people business. You know, our mission of providing healing and hope to children and families really tells everything about us. We serve about 12,000 people every year across 7 states. We employ about 1,600 employees currently. But at the end of the day, it's really about how do we help people that are working through a difficult time in their lives find that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that there is a better tomorrow. And so I'm very proud of what our team members do every day. They're changing lives. They're impacting what we do in our country. They're setting the conditions for the future generations to be successful.
You know, I think people are not surprised to find out you have a military background, that you're Colonel Clark. But how did you get from the United States military to St. Francis Ministries, child and family welfare work?
That is a long journey. You know, I did have the privilege of serving our nation army for 30 years. There's something to be said that when you serve with others during a time of conflict, it builds a bond. But really, before I joined the military, it's going back in my childhood. You know, I had some difficult times when I was a youth from a family perspective, and there was an organization really such as St. Francis that came and worked with me that helped really set the foundation of me moving forward to become the person I am today. So it's been a long journey. I'd say since the time I was 10 years old, I can go back to where I sit today.
Yeah. Do you have a person in mind from that time in your life that really stands out as an example of somebody that helped you and or sort of gave you a path forward?
You know, one of the things we talk about, Andrew, here at St. Francis is it takes a village.
Yeah.
There's so many people that feed into other people, that fed into me when I was an adolescent, teenager, a young adult, even as an older man now. So to name one person, I think, would be disingenuous. You know, I would tell you, if I had to pick one person that I think has been the most influential in my life, it's my wife.
Yeah.
What she taught me when we were dating, so we've been married now for 40 years.
Wow.
She's the only woman that I ever dated, and I'm the only guy she ever dated. So we've been together since we were 16.
Yeah.
But she taught me about grace and compassion and caring for other people. She showed me a life of stability through her family structure that I had never seen. And she really allowed me as a man to develop, and she gave me that, I go back to grace over this period of time. So if there's one most influential person, it's definitely my wife. We've been together now. How old am I, Andrew, now?
I heard 65?
Yeah.
No?
Really?
No?
That's harsh. No, we've been together for 43 years. You know, we got married right when we were 18.
Yeah.
But I've been very blessed. God has given me, you know, an incredible gift through my wife.
That's a really lovely reflection, and I think one of the things that we try to exemplify here at St. Francis, you mentioned that, you know, it takes a village to raise a child, and we often talk about the sort of the village that is St. Francis, or our sort of St. Francis family, as a vehicle for that kind of grace, the opportunity for us to you know, show that same grace that we experience in our lives to people who are in need of it. Can you tell me a little bit about what excites you about, you know, showing up on a Monday morning to be that vehicle of grace?
I am a Monday morning guy.
We know.
And everybody knows that. You know, when I look at the mission of St. Francis, I truly believe it's inspired by the Word of God. You know, you look in the book of James, it talks about taking care of orphans and widows. Yeah. We're taking care of kids who are going through a difficult time. We're working with families who are going through a difficult struggle. There is no greater calling than to help our fellow man to become the person that God always intended them to be. You know, we link a lot of what we do to leadership. I'm very passionate about leadership. And one of the things we have to do is to lift one another up. And we all go through journeys at different times. And so when I come to work on a Monday morning, what inspires me or excites me is we're going to change a life.
Yes.
You know, there's that story out there of the young boy who's at the cusp of the ocean, and he's throwing starfish back in there. You know exactly what I'm
I
talking
know that
about.
story, yeah.
And he's walking along the seashore, and he's throwing starfish back in, and there's an old man who walks up to him and says, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I got to put starfish back in the water or they're going to die." And the old man looks across, the ocean front and says, "There's too many." And that young boy picks one up, looks at it, twirls it in his hand and says, "But I can save this one."
Yeah.
And so every day when we come to work, it's about how many lives can we impact today? Just one life. Who is the next, when I say Bill Clark out there, that we're impacting to give that young man or young woman an opportunity they may not have had? That's exciting.
Yeah, that really ties in with a wisdom. To save one human life is really to save the whole world. And I think it's fair to say that we're in the world-saving business, and that can sometimes feel daunting. But also, it's a huge privilege. And I think for us to, have that perspective that this is a privilege that we get to do, brings us into contact with some pretty amazing things. Can you maybe say a word or two about something you've seen at Saint Francis that just sort of confirms that sense of God's purpose for you, that sense that you're in the right place?
And you know me well, I usually have to take a roundabout way to get to an answer.
Yeah.
And so I want to take a step back, when I look at the Apostle Paul in his letter to the Corinthians, he talks about our job is really to plant and water. God gives the growth.
Yeah.
And so I look at what we do here, and I know you and I talk about this a lot. Our job is just doing that. We're planting and we're watering. That's really our calling. I go back to my wife again. She taught me a very valuable lesson about 5 years ago. We are all on a journey to get home.
Yeah.
Home is not here.
Right.
Home is living with God in perpetual love, and our job is to help one another get there. And so I look at the youth that we impact. That's what we're doing. We're planning and we're watering. We're helping them hopefully find their why, their calling to move forward in life. And so I look at the lives that have been impacted. Some of those stories are just absolutely incredible. We have foster parents who've adopted 6 kids,
Mm-hmm.
who've brought siblings of 6 into their home because they had no place to go. I've seen where young children have been in car accidents, and it had to have been helped, and somebody had to help them do that, working with their families. I've seen our team members go into homes which looks like a broken home, and you think the child's going to come out. The family's abusing alcohol, abusing drugs, the child has issues at school, and our team members go in there and work with that family, and they prevent all that from happening. And so the whole family nucleus goes together. And so the stories are truly endless. But if you look at what we do, the prevention work, or if a child does come out of home, they're changing lives. Yeah. And so what inspires me every day is I get to see all of our team members and how they're doing that.
Yeah, it's really incredible.
It is. It takes me back to my youth when I was living in government housing. There was an organization like Saint Francis who would literally bring baggies of food to our home so my siblings and I could eat.
Yeah.
It leaves an impact on you.
Yeah.
And so when I left the military after 30 years, my calling has always been, how do I help kids? We always talk about they're our future.
Yeah.
But they truly are. And if you can help a kid realize that you do have meaning, you do have purpose, and that somebody does care about you, to your point, we can change the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we do think of the youth we serve as the future, and I think there's also an element in that where they are present. I mean, it's a privilege to get to work with them now. So there is a element of sort of how we help people, how we walk alongside them, but then also, what do we take away from those relationships, those experiences with them? And I think it's transformative. Our vision to transform lives and systems. We're transforming lives, but of the people we serve, but they're transforming our lives too. Mm-hmm. They're helping us go deeper in our faith journeys, in our professional lives, and in our development as human beings. And I think those two things together speak to really the gift that this organization is. Not just externally, but internally. Another thing you alluded to that I'd like to follow up on is, again, your military service. I always experience that as really the framework for how you think about leadership. And I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about leadership lessons you have from your sort of former life and how they play out now in your current role as CEO at Saint Francis.
Okay, I'm going to chase a rabbit here because I want to
Please
go back
do.
to what you said a second ago. When you work with kids and families, your goal is to impact them, to help them. But to your point, they're changing us as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes I really wonder is who's being the more blessed, who's receiving more.
Yeah.
You know, as we talk, and I've listened to you speak, and you're very good at it. My guess is when you're speaking in the pulpit and you're providing, we'll say, wisdom and encouragement to others, sharing the gospel, the Word of God, at the same standpoint, you've received something in return through your study and how people come back and say you've impacted my life. That's what I see happening at St. Francis.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, public service announcement, if you've never heard Andrew speak, you got to do it. He's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. You know, back to the military, what I've really learned about leadership is there's different styles, and it depends upon the situation that you're in. People at our organization know I'm very passionate about that. It starts with learning to lead yourself. I'm a big believer in personal responsibility, accountability, and personal discipline. If you can't start there and look at yourself, if the organization's having a bad day, the first person you look at is you, the leader. So I look at myself. Did I provide the right guidance? Did I provide the right resources? Did I communicate effectively? So you got to learn to lead yourself. And then I go back to the family structure. I truly believe that the family structure, God ordained that to be the nucleus of our society. And when that functions properly, society functions properly. And so leading your family to me is probably the most important task, specifically for me as a man, that I will ever do. And I take that very serious. Yeah. I think once you get a grasp on those two, then it's going into the business world, whatever that may be, where you can help other team members lead the organization that you're part of, because it's never about you. You can't lead by yourself. And then finally, having impact in your community. So to me, there's different levels of leadership, and each of them take a different style at times. And so the military, as we all know, can be a little bit authoritarian. But as you progress in military, you learn it's not about that.
Yeah.
There's a time where I'd say, Andrew, we're doing this. It's got to take the hill, and it is what it is. But as you become more of a senior member of the military, you really learn it's about influence. Mm-hmm. How do I help you either see the picture, encourage you, lift you up, provide you the resources, and then give you the latitude to make decisions? I think that applies to what we do today. When I look at the leaders across St. Francis, we're very wide. Yeah. But what I think is we're all trying to get to the same place. How do we lift each other? How do we encourage one another? How do we provide grace to one another to help those around us?
One of the things I've often heard you said in various settings within the organization has been a reminder that we are more alike than we are different. Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to the thing that's central to who we are, which is to help children and families, adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so that takes God's great diversity of gifts that are present in the people who make up St. Francis and sort of aligns them and helps us to move forward. Your description of leadership, as I'm hearing it, makes me think of a term that is maybe more familiar in a church setting, but the idea of servant leadership. And really that sort of the higher you go in the organization, the more your focus has to be, it's less about the position and more about how do you help people grow and how do you help people lead well. Say a little bit more about servant leadership and its place in your leadership of St. Francis.
You did a very good job at that. I think you've captured it all.
I teed it up maybe a little too well.
No, you did awesome, because I think you're dead on the point here. Our job as leaders is not to, quote, boss people around.
Yeah.
Our job is to serve them, to help them be successful. Yeah. And sometimes my lens or a team member's lens can be a little cloudy, but it's helping people see through multiple lenses to get to what we're all trying to get to. Back to your point is we're more alike than different. It's like any family. Just at St. Francis, sometimes we'll have our moments where we may not all see the same, but if we come back to our mission statement, providing healing and hope to children and families, that's the key. Yeah. That's what binds us together. That's what makes us more alike. And if we always go back to we're making decisions that impact kids and family versus it's Bill's way or Andrew's way or another one of our leaders, that's not what it's about. And so I truly look at it as my job is to help develop other leaders and equip the organization to move forward. Sometimes I do that pretty good. Sometimes probably not so much.
On balance, pretty good. Pretty good.
Well, look at that, right? Leadership, is truly a journey. You grow through different experiences, through time.
Thinking a little bit about the history of Saint Francis, many people may not be familiar with the story of how our organization came to be. The story of Father Bob Mize, an Episcopal priest in western Kansas who saw a problem and set out to fix it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that story?
I do, but I think sometimes you're better equipped at that than I am. It's a very powerful story. If you look at his family life, came from a very well-to-do family who has a long lineage in the state of Kansas, and he basically put all that aside and said, I want to spend my life taking care and serving youth, what we would tend to refer to as high acuity youth, troubled youth today. And so he builds this home in Ellsworth, Kansas, the metropolis of Ellsworth.
Yes, bustling metropolis.
Right, exactly. And as these young men, because it was a young men's home at the time, we're working through different ordeals starting, right at the conclusion of World War II. So September 3rd is our anniversary. This year will be our 79th anniversary. He builds this home where youth, not just from Kansas, but other states came as well, who were truly struggling. Criminogenic behavior, problems at home, dysfunctional families, something happened to a parent, whatever it may be. But he learned to love them unconditionally. We talk about therapy in Christ. That was truly his belief, is I'm going to love you to the point where you start doing the right thing. And if you read the book about him, which is
it's a good book.
It's inspiring. You can see some of those difficulties, but he never gave up. And so from Bob Mize starting that home in Ellsworth, Kansas, here we are today, an organization across 7 states taking care of 12,000 people. But he really set the foundation that I think we always try to go back to. Are we loving people? Are we modeling what Christ wants us to do? And how do we help people work through the challenges to get to a better tomorrow?
Yeah, I think that's a great summary of that history. And at the same time, I also think he would probably be embarrassed to have it be all about him. And so we also recognize that sort of through our history, there have been others who've come along the way, leaders kind of at every level who have contributed to that growth and sort of seen a vision that maybe didn't at first seem possible, but sort of the more faithfully attending to that unconditional love, all of a sudden things are happening and moving in the organization, and it's growing, and it kind of grows rapidly. And there'd be people who'd be surprised to know that we had places in New Mexico and New York, and who we are today. Maybe even in our founder's vision, wouldn't have been able to see the impact we have. But as long as it's kind of tied to that unconditional love, the future is pretty wide open for us. Where do you see us going in the next 5, 10, 20 years?
Okay, everyone chasing the rabbit. I want to go back to, I think if Bob Mize was still with us today, he'd be very proud of St. Francis.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Because if you look at what his vision was of serving youth unconditionally, no matter what, we haven't deviated from that.
Right.
That's still who we are at the end of the day. All of our team members come, how do we help a kid, a family move forward in a time of struggle? It'd be interesting to talk to him today to say, did you have a vision that could go from Ellsworth, Kansas to, across 7 states now?
Yeah.
This is my guess just by reading his book. I think his vision was to have organizations that love people, to help them move forward, that we're all on this journey together to get home.
Yeah.
And if we're being true to that and to see it expand like it has, I go back to, I think he'd be proud of that. Where's St. Francis going? As you know, we've just recently rolled out our 7-year vision. We call it the Journey to Excellence to 2031. Currently, as I mentioned, we serve in 7 states. We have this vision of going into 10 states. We know where we're trying to go to. Currently, we also serve, as I mentioned, about 12,000 people. Our goal is to increase that. How do we increase our impacts? We want to get to 15,000 people. And really secure the stability of the organization long term. We want to stay true to what Bob Mai's vision. We want to take care of kids and families. Therapy in Christ, unconditional love. How do we help people move forward? And we want to increase that impact, but we want to tether it right back to, are we fulfilling our mission, our why?
Yeah. So to say it plainly, our mission is to provide healing and hope to children and families. One of the things I love about Saint Francis is that is an uncomplicated statement. It's clear. It tells us what we need to be doing. It drives us on a daily basis.
You almost think they made that for an Army guy.
Maybe,
right? I mean, it's got to be simple.
Yeah, got to
right?
keep it simple.
Right.
But that sort of daily return to providing healing and hope. I mean, as you know, I write a daily devotion for the organization. It helps us begin and end our day in faith, which again it was Bob Mai's vision for us as a faith-based organization. I think people could probably quote that line, in one way or the other on a nearly daily basis. How are we focusing ourselves to provide healing, which is about an internal state and an external state of renew and repair, and then how do we broaden the horizon of hope so that people can say, the circumstances I'm in right now aren't what I have to stay in, and I'm curious on your thoughts about how well we do that mission. How do you feel we're doing these days, fulfilling that mission?
As you talk about our mission and where we're going, there's so much to unpack there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What I'm very proud of the organization is we always come back to that. As we work in some of our senior meetings about how do we allocate resources, where we're going, we never deviate from how we're providing healing and hope to children and families. We don't lose sight of our simple vision statement, right? Transforming lives and systems. I think as an organization, if we can continue to focus on that, and that's really our job at the senior level, is how do we keep that vision alive? How do we keep communicating that? We have to be consistent. We have to be clear with that all the time, because our team members are the ones out doing the work. They're the ones in the front lines who are helping these kids and families. But they'll let them know that it all comes together to help take care of people. I think overall, if you ask me how we're doing, I think we do exceptional work.
Yeah.
I think we always strive to get better. It's kind of where our journey is, a journey to excellence. We want to get 1% better every day.
Yeah.
It's not because we're doing a bad job. It's people need help.
Yeah.
And so how do we find more ways, more inclusive ways, faster ways, more resourceful ways to help people?
I think there's a general perception that that child and family welfare as sort of a field or as a space is broken, and I think we see some of that. We see a lot of brokenness for sure. Let's pick up that piece about transforming systems. What is Saint Francis' role in helping sort of create and sustain and innovate, better systems for child and family welfare and all the systems we interact with?
I think we have to take a step back and take a look at it. If the family nucleus, the family structure is intact, a lot of these challenges disappear.
Yeah.
And so how do we get left of the challenges, I say, to work with it, the prevention model? But sometimes that doesn't always work, and so you have these complex systems, and there are so many different stakeholders that deal with child and family welfare. It's just not St. Francis in a vacuum. We partner with our state partners. You have to work with law enforcement, the judicial arms, our schools, hospitals, behavioral health. We can just keep talking about them, and each of these organizations have a different system.
Yeah.
They're complex in their nature, but how do you get all the systems to come together to communicate effectively to help take care of people? And so when you look at our vision statement of transforming lives, that leads to me right into our mission statement, providing healing and hope. But transforming systems is about getting all the different stakeholders to come together to make an impact in our world through very complex, different ways of delivering these. It could be a modality, it could be a service, whatever it may be.
Yeah. The thing that I've often been impressed with as we've traveled around and interacted with folks in all of our states and in all of our different program lines is the culture of Saint Francis. And I think you are likewise in this, that culture, getting that right is really important. What are the things that build for a good culture in the kind of work we do?
First thing I think we talk about traveling around together. It's a good thing that nobody's inside that tape and that, right? Because it does become the Laurel and Hardy show.
Sure enough.
Sure enough. We have good times together.
We could do the coffee and cars thing. Yeah.
Maybe that's what we should do. I do appreciate your question about culture. Culture is critical to an organization, and we center our culture around our 5 key values as an organization.
Yeah.
So if you go back and look at our mission or vision, that's really the center of the target.
Yeah.
But since we're across 7 states and so diverse, how do we do that and work together? The culture helps us do that, and that links right back to the core values that we have. And so sharing those continuously, modeling them, making sure our leaders all know them, we're all doing that. I need to treat you with respect and dignity. Yeah. Civility is a big word in our organization.
Absolutely.
Right? Integrity is critical. Do the right thing at the right time for the right reason when no one's looking. We believe in empowerment. Everybody has the ability to make a decision, because if you're going to change lives, you got to be able to make a decision, and we're okay with our frontline people making a decision to fulfill our mission statement. We got to do good work. There are so many people that count on us, not just the people that we serve, but if you think about the majority of our funding comes from either the federal or state level, taxpayer money. Yeah. And they're counting on us to give the people that we serve and them our best effort every day, and to hold ourselves accountable to that. The other unique thing, our 5th core value is the concept of innovation. We talk a lot, this in our company, that family and child welfare is different today in 2024 than it was before the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's completely different.
Totally.
And you go back even a decade before that. And so it's ever evolving, and we, St. Francis plus our stakeholders, we have to evolve with it. We have to meet people where they're at. And so having those 5 core values shaping our culture, when you and I go to Mississippi, right? We know how we're going to interact and how we shall be working together. If we go to Nebraska, it's the same thing. Yeah. And so I look at, here's the target, our mission, our vision. Then you have the outer ring, just outside of that, which is our values. And then you have the big ring. I love that we're a faith-based organization. That's why many of us are here. Yeah. And we can unashamedly share the redemptive power of Jesus Christ. We can share the gospel inside, we can share it outside, and we're not bashful to talk about that. Yeah. And so you go back to your daily devotion, which are awesome.
Thank you.
Yep, I enjoy reading those. But I think it helps us center as an organization. Every day we can come back to, you talk about start and end, but there's a centering that has to happen as well. Yeah. And you play a key role in that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I've really appreciated the opportunity to speak with folks, frontline workers, people in support roles, really across the entire organization, and to hear how meaningful it is to sort of take their faith and put it into action in the work they do. And so in many ways, we're kind of at the forefront of that living out of Jesus' call to serve one another.
I think I'm sorry interrupting.
Yeah, no problem.
Our team members who are out doing the work, they deal with a lot of trauma. Yeah. They see trauma, they deal with trauma. And that centeredness that we were just talking about, that they can come back to it helps them, right? It's coming back for that 2-minute sabbatical, we'll call it, in the middle of their day. Yeah. It's like, okay, I get it, right? Yeah. And I go back out into the world. There's no difference in when Christ was working with the disciples. Yeah. They'd step away for a short period of time to go back out into some of that challenge. And so what you're talking about from my lens for what you do is doing that, giving that respite.
Yeah, I think it's about filling people's cups.
Yeah.
And to take both what they need back out into the work, and to also know that some of the truly horrible things that they have to encounter or see aren't just sort of lost in a uncaring universe, right? That God has seen that suffering and has acted in it, and part of that acting is in what Jesus did on the cross, and part of it is in what they do to respond, to do the work, why they were called into social work, perhaps in the first place, to really make that alive again in some powerful ways.
What really impresses me tied to that, if you look at our team members, you talk about they have to see it, they can feel it almost. But sometimes they're also putting themselves in harm's way.
Yeah.
When you deal with higher acuity youth in the teenage years, sometimes there's actually physical struggle that people don't really know about and see. And you see our team members who will endure that because they want to help people, right? And so how do we help them deal with that as well?
Yeah, that's really crucial. That's really crucial. Sometimes, this work can kind of fall under the rubric of no good deed goes unpunished. And sometimes, we because of how intense it is, and because of the challenges that are out there, find ourselves, the subject of unflattering portrayals of what we do. If you could turn to somebody who has sort of written an article or stated, that there's, St. Francis is a mess, or child and family welfare is a mess, what would you say to that? What's your response to something like that?
It's a deep question, Andrew.
That's what I do.
It's what you do. Yeah, I appreciate that. No organization is perfect, and neither is ours.
Yeah.
But what I can tell people unequivocally is St. Francis cares for people. And we are doing our very best to go back to the mission of providing healing and hope to kids and families, to help people move forward. That there should not be a doubt that we're trying to help people. Can we get better at it? Absolutely goes back to our own values of quality, innovation, that we can get better. But I would hope that the people that we support and those that we partner with know that we are in it because we want to help people. It goes back to being a servant leader.
Yeah.
If you're not called to this kind of work, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And when you look at our team members, Andrew, you know this because you see them as much as I do, they're very passionate about what they do. And when a child is successful, for example, they could be reunified with their family.
Yes.
They could find their forever home through adoption with a different family. There's long-term placement with a foster family. You can actually see our team members weep for joy over this child. When you can't find a long-term placement, how much it agonizes them. And I watch our team members on a daily basis up to the middle of the night trying to find a place to put a child so they're not sleeping in an office. They're not doing without. It's difficult work, but our people believe in it. So I go back to people who look at us from the outside. We are generally here to help people, and we are striving to get better.
There are so many tremendous success stories that I think we are privileged to hear, and because we spend a lot of time out with our folks. It just sort of they sort of pile up in a way that if you've taken individually, you think, oh, I've only did one thing here, but no, really, that's 12,000 success stories that are in the process of being written by the work we do, and so part of it is maybe we have to learn to tell our story and those stories better and better, but turning towards the communities where we serve, for instance, or the kinds of civic or church-based partnerships that are possible. What would your invitation be to folks around how they can help Saint Francis Ministries?
In the state of Texas, they use a term called community-based care.
Yes.
Which I find to be very powerful.
I do too.
It goes back to it's a village. It takes all of us. And so when we talk to our communities, this is what it's about. It's the families, the kids in your community, and how do we all partner with different stakeholders to help one another be successful. We are part of that, but we're not by ourselves.
Correct.
We may help a child find a foster home, get reunited with their family, but just take the education community, just as critical. We have to make sure that the child is receiving the proper education. And what happens in the education community is critical to their development and success as an adult. And so all these different stakeholders we talked about, I think if we all just realize we're here to help one another on a journey, I go back to it's about community-based care.
Yeah, that opportunity, I think, for churches big and little to provide help, to provide their prayers. I mean, I think that's really critical in what we are. We can't do this without the power of prayer. I think organizations and individuals, they may be thinking, well, I don't know what I can give. And I think my response to that is generally, well, like let's pray about it. Let's really think about it. What are the assets you have? What are the gifts you can share? And oftentimes we can find all kinds of amazing things that can really help support the work we do here. There's really sort of no gift too small, both on a in-kind level or on a financial level. Let's talk a little bit about philanthropic culture and broadly and really with Saint Francis. How is that important to us?
The work we do, as I mentioned a minute ago, is primarily supported through taxpayer revenue at the federal level and in different states that we partner with. But that doesn't cover everything.
Right.
And so finding people who want to partner with us, who are willing to share the blessings they've received financially specifically, so we can help take care of these kids and families. We are a nonprofit. The contracts that we receive are predominantly cost reimbursements, so what it takes to take care of a child is what we get reimbursed for. But there's things that it doesn't cover. Think about capital costs, for example, that to maintain buildings, as an example. That's a big expense. And so St. Francis have figured it out kind of on their own. I'm appreciative of what our state and federal partners do.
Absolutely.
But it goes back to it takes a village. And where we spend our time, our talents, our treasure, talks a lot about who we are as well.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that I've been inspired by is again that sort of the way in which this church or this person who's been giving us $100 a month for the last 30 years, whatever those kinds of contributions look like, Christmas for kids, where a church collects up Christmas presents so that no child will go without a proper Christmas. I think there's something that compounds in that kind of kindness, and it's a little hard to see from the outside, but I think we need to reassure folks that really is making a difference.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
I mean, God has blessed us all differently, and I'll go back to how we share our time, talent, and treasure.
Yeah.
But the person who is giving $100 a month, there's somebody in my mind out of Texas, retired colonel, great American.
Yeah.
The impact he and his wife have had for decades by being faithful doing that, they've changed lives.
Yeah.
They've just allowed us to be the instrument to help that happen. But it doesn't matter if you're contributing $100 or $1 million. At the end of the day, it all goes into how do we help take care of these kids. And so if you take 12,000 people a year and you do the math behind that, that's a lot of people over an extended period of time. In a decade, it's 120,000. In 2 decades, it's almost 250,000. And those people go out and help. It goes across the world. It's not just in the 7 states that we work in. I know of people that we've worked with who have left our country and went internationally, who've been able to share the message about, we're here to help one another.
Yeah.
That's the power of what we're doing to me.
Yeah, and I think that ties into a spirit of gratitude that I think is foundational for an organization like ours. To be thankful for what people have provided, and to continue to provide that opportunity. What do you think about sort of philanthropic effort as a work of gratitude?
That's a great word. Gratitude to me comes from a position of what your attitude is. So I have this sign that hangs above my whiteboard in my office, given to me by a very dear friend of mine, and it says, "Attitude is everything. Pick a good one."
Yeah.
That's what gratitude's about.
Yeah.
I've been blessed. I've been fortunate. I'm here to help other people on their journey. And so my attitude is that I'm thankful for that, but it's also I want to give back. we all read different stories from time to time. I mentioned the one about the young boy in the ocean front there. But I've read one as well where a individual is suffering from behavioral health challenges, thinking about ending his life, and he goes and sees a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to lock up your house. I want you to go across the railroad tracks, and for the next 30 days, I just want you to serve the people who are living over there homeless. Then I want you to come back and see me.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there. So that young man does that, comes back 30 days later. What'd you learn? I learned to be grateful.
Yeah.
I learned that in giving to others, really I was the beneficiary. And so to spend my life in service to other people and have a perspective of I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve others, to give to others, it's transformative. So an attitude of gratitude is essential.
Yeah.
And I can even use that in my own life. I look at, you know this, Clark's my third last name.
Right.
Before I left high school, I moved 23 times. There was times I was in 3 different schools in a year. I went from that environment to fighting our nation's wars. And so I could have sat back and said, woe is me, my life is tough, rather than realizing I've had people who have helped me along the way. I've had the opportunity to lead people in time of trial. I've been spared. That's a true statement in some of the places I've been to. And so I truly try to live my life in position as I am grateful for the gifts I have, for the time that I've been given, for the family that I have, to include my work family. It truly changes your perspective in life.
Yeah.
It's not woe is me. Those are growth opportunities. And I'm grateful that God allowed me to see they were growth opportunities.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that connection, and now I'm kind of going to throw a bit of a curveball at you. Could the young man who was young Bill Clark imagine the Bill Clark of today, and connect that to that piece of gratitude?
When I look back at the young Bill Clark, the one who was, what I would say, fighting for survival with my siblings. So I have 3 other siblings. We're still extremely close today. We grew up taking care of one another.
Yeah.
Then going into the military, but before that, my goal was always to play professional baseball. I actually, at one time in my life, when I was a little bit younger, had a talent for pitching. I was one of those weird people who could throw the ball pretty fast.
Yeah.
And so I went from moving around a lot. I went to playing college baseball and blew out my arm.
Yeah.
And it was like, I could have just said, woe is me. What do I do now? At that time, I was dating my now wife and decided to join the Army. I really didn't want to be in school at the time. Wasn't my thing. I went to school to play ball, if that makes sense. Yeah. To kind of get away. But once I got into the Army, I found other Christians who took an interest in me and helped me develop me as a human being and then as a leader.
Yeah.
And I go back to it's discovering your why in life. It's critical.
Yeah.
And we're all on a different journey and different times. We understand that. But I'd say by the time I was about 28, I realized what my why was. At that point, I was married, had 2 kids. And once I understood my true calling, as I thought God wanted me to do during my time here on earth, it really propelled me in a different direction. It's kind of how I got here.
Yeah.
So I go back to leading. To me, life is about leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And it starts with yourself. Every morning, as you know, I'm that weird guy who gets up real early.
Yep.
But I go back and I spend time reflecting every day about how did I do yesterday.
Yeah.
These things you did well, these things I need to improve on, but it's holding myself accountable. It's being responsible, and then having the discipline to try to work on it.
Yeah, there's something powerful in that process of self-reflection and self-examination to say, here's what I did well, here's what I didn't do well. I can give thanks for this. I can sort of ask for forgiveness on these things, and I can try to do better. And apply that into the next day, and I think that process is really key as a spiritual discipline.
It is, and I would tell you, my perception of being a leader has grown. You know, when I was a young leader in the Army, it's like, I can't do anything wrong. You know, I was striving for perfection,
Yeah.
and that has consequences to it as a leader.
Yeah.
And as I got older and matured, and people poured into me, I really realized that it's not about perfection. It's about growth.
Yeah.
It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to tell people, but you got to own it. You know, when I make a mistake, Andrew, I need to tell you, hey, I didn't do this. This is on me. That's why I think effective leadership goes back to looking at yourself first.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, one of the remarkable things of working with you is, you know, it's not so much that there's a right way and a wrong way in the Bill Clark way, as there is, you know, this process for keeping the mission at the core of who we are, seeking to do the best we can in that way, and when we fall short or when we make a mistake, it's, you know, it's an opportunity for continued growth, and that's encouraged.
If we spend our time casting blame all the time, nothing good comes of that.
Nothing changes.
Right? If the milk's already been spilled, does it do you any good to get upset that the milk spilled? Rather acknowledge that, hey, I spilled the milk. Now, how do we pick it up and move forward to make us more successful together?
Yeah.
I think that's really a perspective that I would encourage most leaders to take a look at. Blame doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't mean you can't identify the challenge, but really it's how do you move forward as a team, as an organization, and really as an individual.
Yeah.
Because I think once you embrace accountability, responsibility, and personal discipline, when you have a shortfall, you will own it instantaneously. Yep, this was my fault. I got to own it.
Yeah. The story that you tell about, you know, the transformation from young man to sort of into young adulthood and then deeper into adulthood. You know, I think that's a really powerful thing for the people we serve to know. You know, that you know, that you're not somebody coming in from outside with all the answers that they could need, that you to do what they need to do, but that you're somebody who kind of has walked the same walk. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, how that impacts your leadership, how you know, how that makes a difference?
You go back to, you talked about leadership in the Army versus leadership today. In the Army, I would tell you that I was an expert. I knew it, right? I knew every aspect of how the unit functioned, how weapon systems, whatever it may be that made the Army the Army. I grew up in that, so I knew it.
Yeah.
It's not the same in Saint Francis, right?
Yeah.
When I look at our team members, I know that they are the experts. You know, our social workers who are out there doing that, those supervisors, directors who are truly with families. I openly admit, and I always will, you know more about this business than I do. What I bring is the perspective of the kid who's receiving it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that I would say my talent, if I have any, is I understand how complex organizations fit together. And I hope I'm striving to, everybody has a piece of that. So how do I encourage you to bring your talent together?
Yeah.
I don't go down to that frontline social worker and say, you should be doing business this way, because I know he or she is much better equipped at that. I'm counting on them to deliver a quality service, to give us their best effort every day to fulfill our mission. And so I think when you understand that you don't know everything, and it takes all of us working together. I talk a lot about, in Saint Francis, nobody is of any greater value than anybody else.
Yeah.
Period. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO, the EOMM, which is really a cool title, don't you know?
EOM.
The OM. Or to our frontline worker, the person driving the cars to move kids around.
Yeah.
We're all on the bus together. And if we recognize that everybody has to be on the bus together, we all have value. And if we don't all contribute, the bus doesn't move properly.
Yeah. Tell me something that would just absolutely surprise, you know, folks who haven't gotten to know you as well as I have. What's something that would just, they could not have guessed in a million years about Bill Clark?
Here's my perception, all right, and I could be wrong, and you can correct me. A lot of times, I think when our team members or people see me, it's like, that guy's all together, right? He knows where we're going. he has a calmness about him in a time of chaos.
Yeah.
And so I tend not to share true emotion a lot. You know, I'm a hugger. I like to smile and laugh, but what people don't see about me is I'm very sentimental.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would surprise people. You know, I'll tell you, for example, this morning, my wife and I over breakfast, I was talking about my third child, which is a son. So we have, our oldest is a daughter, and we have
Yep.
3 boys.
Yep.
I'm very proud of all of them. But I was relaying to her, I've been studying about a significant point in a man's life is when their father passes away. So much because what you realize is my dad is probably the only man who wanted me to be better than him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm talking to her about this, and believe it or not, I find myself crying at the table explain this because it's such a true statement to me.
Yeah.
I have 4 great kids. My goal for them is to be happy and fulfilled. But in this case, the son I was talking about, I really want him to be better than me.
Yeah.
Not to become great, but I can see my own faults.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I am sentimental, but I tend to share that in very closed circles. I'm becoming better at it with my own family. And part of that is some of the trauma I've dealt with from the Army.
Yeah.
I don't share a lot of that stuff, but I think 50 is a great equalizer. I wish I was 50, but at that point, I found myself becoming much more sentimental. I open up to my family much more than I ever did.
Yeah.
So maybe that would shock them a little bit.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think there is sometimes a burden of leadership that you have to have all the answers, and you sit alone in your office in the puzzle palace in Salina and have all the moving pieces, and to have that other side of you, sort of something we can see. I think it's both. It's reassuring. I think it's reassuring and also inspiring. You know, that we're all works in progress. We're all striving to get better, and to leave the world better than we found it, and to have an impact in the lives of the people we love, that draws them into the person God has dreamt them to be, right? So that's really helpful, and I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. You know, I go back to quotes from my wife, you know, that you pick up from time to time.
Yeah.
She quoted something to me, I bet it was a decade ago, and the first time I heard it, it's like, that sounds kind of harsh. But then I had her peel it back for me, and she said, people are weak and disappointing. Love them anyways.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, help me understand this, because, what are we saying here? And she said, we all fall short of the glory of God. We all have our weaknesses.
Yeah.
We're all human. We all sin. And because of that, we will disappoint the expectation of somebody else.
Yeah.
And so when somebody around you makes a mistake and they disappoint you, love them anyways.
Yeah.
Because what she also taught me was you should always look at that from her to me. I am here to, quote, serve you to fulfill your life as a husband, wife. And if you come at it from that perspective that when things don't go properly, she's not doing it to make me mad.
Right.
It's usually my misperception of what's going
right.
on.
Yeah. Yeah.
She has taught me more about the concept of grace than any other human being that I know, and how she models that in our family.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm amazed she puts up with me, I'll be honest with you.
Well, my wife is the same way.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful for that. That quote you share reminds me of another one. Be kind. Everyone you meet is fighting their own great battle.
Right.
And I think just a little bit of more kindness in the world, a little more empathy, would go to great lengths to make things better.
You never know what somebody else is dealing with.
Yeah.
You don't.
You don't.
Sometimes we know some of the challenges.
Yeah.
But I can look at you and say, Andrew's got it all going on. But I don't know what's happening inside your family, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or one of your children having a challenge.
Yeah.
Is there an illness in there? That's, I don't know unless you...
Yeah, and I think the ability for us to share those sort of vulnerable parts of who we are is really important.
It's hard.
It's hard. Mm-hmm. but I think that's how we know we have each other's backs, right? Is when we get to that sort of deeper place of care and concern. We're not just here to punch a clock, right? We're here to make a difference, and again, as we've said, that's both an external difference. That's a difference that's aimed at helping the people we're called to serve, often involuntary clientele.
Yeah.
And so we have to have some grace to be able to meet those people kind of where they're at and to help walk alongside them. But we need it for each other as team members.
I love your comment about the bond concept.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier that in the military, there's an unbreakable bond.
Yeah.
When you do some of the tough things in those units that I've been in, it never goes away. So I've been retired now. Wow, I'm old. I've been retired a decade.
Wow.
But a young medic who was in my striker, part of my unit in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Even today, we communicate consistently.
Yeah.
Because of the bond that was forged. To move that forward, Saint Francis has worked through its own valley.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the team members who were here during the valley and who had to dig in and have each other's back and know that the person who's got my back, I got their back, and that we're all in this together, and I believe in that person, it builds a deep-seated teamwork atmosphere that is really difficult to duplicate in an organization that's not experiencing that. So one of the things I appreciate about our organization is people tend to have each other's back.
Yeah, I wouldn't wish that adversity on
Absolutely
anyone. But there's something, as you say, about what it creates in a team that really, is sort of the ingredients of making miracles happen. Where we were and where we are, you could 9 out of 10 times you'd say, well, we could count those folks out, but we really rose to the challenge. Saint Francis Ministries really rose to that challenge, and no small part because of your leadership. But I want to dig into that a minute and ask you. What are your sort of core ideas around what forms a really great team? What should people be doing, not just at the senior leadership level, but really at every level? The front line, the supervisory level, the director level, the VP level. What makes for a great team?
I think first it's got to start in that you have to buy into your why.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to agree that this is our mission, this is what our why is, this is what we're called to do. From that, it creates we're more alike than different. It gives us a focal point of where to go. When we're in the midst of the storm, in the midst of chaos, where are we going? This is where we're going. And so I think when people buy into the why, and then you learn to accept one another. Your talents are completely different than mine, and I need to accept that you bring talent that I don't have to the team, and the team needs your talent to be successful.
Yeah.
And so instead of competing with one another, we want to create an atmosphere of harmony where we're multiplying those gifts when you bring them together. And so if you can truly buy into the mission of the organization, you can accept the individuals around you and then try to make those talents come together, you get something very powerful and something very special.
Yeah.
I'm not here to compete with you, Andrew. I want to walk alongside you to fulfill our mission to help people become the individual God created them to be.
Yeah.
That's the power, I think, of Saint Francis.
Yeah. I really appreciate that answer. It also makes me think that if it were a competition, you're up at 4:30 in the gym and I am not. However,
but you're we're not going to go there.
Well, I think I think it speaks to the different things. I think maybe what people call self-care, right? That it's not an extravagance. It's not an extra thing. It's really taking care of the body that God gave us as a temple for the Holy Spirit to live and serve and move through. And so we aren't interested in grinding people down. Retention rates are very challenging in our work. So I think what's your advice to folks about how to strike the right balance of their personal life, their professional life, their physical well-being, their spiritual well-being? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Cameron, take a step back again, because
Please
you
do.
said something really struck a chord with me. I want to go back to one of the Apostle Paul's letter to the church at Corinth, because it's very powerful. He talks about we all have different talents. We have different positions, for example. But how you bring them together, and he uses the body as an analogy. You need the ear, you need the eye, you need the hands. We need all these different pieces coming together. If there was 100 of me, Saint Francis would not be successful. If there was 100 of you,
Right.
But what we need is everybody to bring your talent to the team and saying, this is what I can lay before to help us move forward.
Yeah.
I think when we realize that, we're more alike than different.
Yeah.
We have different talents. We can really do something special. Now back to question you really asked me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something I developed a long time ago that I've shared with my kids and I share with other young individuals is developing a forward-looking plan for your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have a 5-year plan, and I've always had one. It's the aspects in there that get to what you said. It's about balance.
Yeah.
You have to be in balance. And so inside of that, I have goals from a faith perspective. I have goals from a physical well-being perspective. I have goals from a family perspective, a professional, and a financial. And I try to map all that out to see, am I in balance here? Because if you get out of balance, then you start to struggle. And so as you mentioned, I get up at 4:30. I'm that weird guy. No alarm clock either.
Oh, man.
But I do because I try to get myself centered to start my day.
Yeah.
So when I get up, I have my quiet time. I go back to my faith. It's very important to me. And spending time in prayer with God and reading His Word is critical to helping me get mentally prepared for the day. From that, I go into the gym. The gym is a great place to relieve stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you can leave that someplace else, it also energizes you. It creates endorphins in your system. And so I am, as you mentioned, that guy who comes in Monday.
Raring to go.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And so it's getting my mind and my body prepared for the day to deal with the challenges to help other people. But you got to find the balance. And so when I work with youth, I try to get them to see there's a way to do this. I just went through this with my grandson.
Yeah.
Can you believe my grandson just graduated high school?
It's unbelievable, man.
What's up with that? But I think sharing with all team members, find balance. That's where you find harmony and peace. And most importantly, it's where you learn to become content. Another spiritual concept.
Yeah.
Be content in all things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think that work to find all those elements of balance. I think that's how we. I think it ties in with our value of integrity, right? It's both doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason when no one's looking. But that's what discipline is about, right?
Yeah.
That's how you tie all those things together and integrate as a really fully formed person that is how God wants you to be.
It's not the result, it's the process.
Yes.
You have to trust the process. You have to do it every day. So I'm in the gym every day, and there's a stretching routine I go through every morning. It takes me 15 minutes. I hate it.
Yeah.
It's like, come on. But I know by doing that, the process, it gets the result down the road. I don't even worry about the result.
Yeah.
It's just trusting the process.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And to your point, personal discipline is not about being regimented or it's got to be this way.
Yeah.
It's holding yourself accountable, right? It's being responsible for your actions. It goes back to what you said, do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Consistently.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah. And I think having partners in that kind of accountability is really important. If you have a friend or a spouse or coworker even who can say, how you doing? And it be more than just sort of the thing you say to somebody, right? That it's a deeper kind of question, that we get there together. If we really are doing this well, we have people who will tell us, when we're not doing well, and we'll have people who will cheer for us when we're going. And I really think a lot about, in my work, particularly as I try to communicate with the organization, to have people think about that, that they're looking out for one another, right? We're looking out for the people we serve. We're looking out for one another, Bill, one last question for you. You sit down on an airplane, and the person sitting next to you looks at you, sees the little lapel pin on your jacket, and says, "What's that all about? What do you do for a living?" What would you say to that person?
It's funny you asked that. I actually had that question just
Awesome.
pop up less
Awesome.
than a month ago. I'm on a plane flying out of Kansas City, and there's a gentleman sitting next to me, and I'm wearing a coat, and he sees that, and he says, "Hey, what's that about?" And I tell him the organization, but I don't tell him what I do.
Yeah.
Right? This is not my job. I work for Saint Francis Ministries. We provide healing and hope to children and families. We're here to transform lives and systems. You want to know more about it?
Yeah.
I invite them in.
Yeah.
And this guy's like, yeah, tell me more. And so then you start shaping the magnitude of what we do, but then you really get into, we're in the people business,
Yeah.
right? We're here to help people become the person God wanted them to be. We're helping them to navigate a time of trial usually. It's a journey. We're looking for partners. So if you want to partner with us, whatever that may look like, we can peel that back. So I usually end up giving people my business cards. Sometimes they'll reach out and say, hey, can we chat more?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a great conversation. Those conversations, believe it or not, Andrew, by just wearing a small pin at times.
Yeah.
I met a lady in a plane flying out, where was I flying out of? Salt Lake at 5 o'clock in the morning. And she started talking to me, and, you know, I just wanted to go to sleep, but truthfully,
Right.
But you can have great conversations because what I think I've learned in my time on this earth, people genuinely care about people.
Yeah.
And we all want to help one another. It's the rare person you come about that is so self-centered, who doesn't realize that I need you and other team members. Those are a rarity to me.
Yeah.
Do they exist? Yeah.
Sure.
But I think we all realize as human beings, we're all dependent upon one another to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you for this conversation. It's been really great to get to hear on these various topics from you and to peel back a little bit more of your story. It's an inspiration, I think, to us, and so on behalf of all the folks at Saint Francis Ministries, thank you for your leadership. Thank you all for your time with this video and this podcast, and we hope there'll be some more.